I think where the panel standing between you and your weekend, we'll try to make it quick. Not sure how we can make that happen, but we'll try. Um, no introductions. You did a great job. Thank you. Listening through the talks, the reflections, there's a lot of mention of we should, we have to, a lot of action verbs that we have to put in actions to make sure that we get what we want out of this AI thing. You're going to help me here trying to frame all of this in your own words from your own perspective. There's good reason why Silicon Valley is in the West Coast. On the other end, there's Congress. They're too far from each other. One is innovating, one is trying to catch up to curb the innovation and make sure that we don't, I don't even know what they're trying to do, but since we are in a college and in an academic institution, and we'll start all the way from the right route, this AI thing between the laissez-faire, let them eat cake, right? And let's not even touch this thing. What's the sweet spot for this AI to be impactful, especially from your perspective as a professor?
Well, we haven't found the sweet spot yet because we are, as academics, I always am amused by parents of students who say, oh, you're going to indoctrinate our children. If we could do that, we would be really a lot more organized than we are. What we have currently at College of the Canyons, and I think it's probably true in all educational institutions, we're divided as to whether this is a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. We're going back to my colleagues in the sciences. Shane Ramey has been discussing this with me for some time. They've been dealing with it in the sciences for a long time. They've been dealing with technology. We've talked about whether we were going to allow calculators in tests or whether we were going to allow people to Google things. Now Google has become a verb. What we have from my perspective now with ChatGPT and with generative AI in general, it's coming for us now. It's coming for us in the humanities. And we have to protect our use of language and how it gets used. We have to embrace it. But there is some resistance among my colleagues to do that. We need to find a way to help our students use it ethically and use it responsibly and use it to their advantage rather than some of the nightmare scenarios that we've heard about today where the technology is taking over and reducing our humanity. I think if we keep it in the humanities, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, you mentioned ethics and question for your neighbor. Is this an ethical problem? Is it a technical issue? Is it just a training issue? Or we just need some time to get used to it and all these problems will go away? What do you think?
I think we definitely need time to get used to it, but I don't think the problems will go away. What's going to happen is that we will find a happy medium. We'll find a stability point where we're all happy with how things are. So for example, putting our pictures out there on the internet, there are people who are really scared of it, there are people who love it, and everybody has found their own niche. People go the level that they want to go, and they've figured out how they want to do it. So I think going forward, it's just going to be, there are ethical considerations, there are going to be frameworks, there are going to be regulations around that. Like, it's very important for governments to make sure that, people's concerns are addressed, like privacy, trust, what's happening to my data? Why are you even asking for this data? Right? So those kind of questions, we have to develop regulations and guidelines around that. So that's going to be one part of it. And then after that, technology is going to take over. Wherever it's unregulated, wherever it can find loopholes, that's what technology does. And it's going to move forward with that. And the third aspect is going to be personal choice. There are people who refuse to use Google. They use DuckDuckGo because they feel I have more privacy that way. So I think Kwaai has a great opportunity to bring in that open source personal choice component to people so that they can then pick the option that they are comfortable with.
That's an optimistic outlook. Thank you
Yes,
for that.
I'm very optimistic.
Ray, one question. What is the urgency of addressing these issues? We've seen the graph. I mean, this is an exponential growth
Yeah, I think it's
Those-
going to grow even steeper
fast,
now.
right? And the gap between the no and no nots and the AI and the AI nots, it's going to grow and grow and grow. Are we still within that opportunity window to take action, or it's already too late?
We are, but the window is much, much shorter now. And we have to recognize that during the first wave of the internet bypassed entire communities, tribal regions, Latino communities. There are Latino communities in LA that have 1 megabit internet speed today. That's in the heart of one of the wealthiest cities on earth. There are people getting 1 megabit, which you can't do anything with 1 megabit. Maybe do a text. Maybe that's about it. But the problem is, if we don't do something well, there's been some policy changes. President Biden made a directive that 40% of the entire federal budget must be spent on these underserved communities. But the problem is, if no one is there to advocate for them and no one is there to plan and architect and everything, it's not going to happen. So I've organized a coalition with some Latino leaders, and we're going to do it. We're architecting hyperscale micro edge data centers. We're going to be slamming it in. As soon as that fiber, because they're building 10,000 miles of fiber in California, as soon as that fiber goes through community, we're dropping in AI capable equipment there. Because we're not going to wait another decade or another 20 years for these communities to be bypassed as this new internet, because the new internet is AI internet.
Yeah.
So everyone should have equitable access to this. So
And back to the keyword should, right? And everyone. And
it should be a right. It should not be a optional.
yeah, and
thing.
it's not a privilege anymore, right? Either you're included in that planning or you're not. I'm more concerned about the other side of the table, these politicians who have to come up with a framework so we can operate within an AI world. Are they up to the task?
No, they're not even up to the. They're not even up to the broadband. They don't even understand the task of advocating for fiber internet for all the disadvantaged communities. They've been programmed to accept a minimalist standard, like that 1 megabit, 10 megabit, 100 megabits is 20, 30-year-old standards. And that's what they've been programmed, through lobbying and everything else, to accept that as the new standard. AI is not 100 megabit, standard. But on the education side, there's also policies needed, because one of the areas that people are ignoring is the entire tutoring economy has collapsed because of ChatGPT. All those stocks, all those tutoring companies and everything, that tutoring industry has collapsed. So you cannot stop this wave. So you either get on board and set up policies on, teach students the correct way to use the technology, how to filter, discern the truth out of it, or use it for certain tasks, like how to clean up a document, or how to format an email, like, for example, I use it to teach students how to clean up their grammar in emails so that they can learn business skills, so that they can get hired, so they can communicate with a recruiter, they can communicate in a job.
That's a good point. Sushil, you did a great work covering so much. I will come back to you. But because he mentioned how he deals with students, I would like to ask Ruth one more time, have you embedded AI in your teaching?
Mm-hmm. I have.
And if you did, why? And if you haven't, why?
Okay, so some people in the room have heard this anecdote. I've been telling this story since last December. ChatGPT 4 came out in November. Someone will give me the date, November something. It was in my classroom in December. I had 2 students submit essays that looked freakily similar. But the only tools I had at that time were all the plagiarism tools. I have, turnitin.com and all those kinds of things. You run it through there and it looks like, oh, you've cheated. So, that sets a whole ball in motion. Then through talking to Rizzo, he was asking me about Shakespeare plays and just playing with it at that time to try and fool it, which is what a lot of people are trying to do. You can't outsmart it, so give that up. But the only tool I had was a plagiarism tool. And so I needed to develop a new tool that that recognized the use of AI and then said, we're talking about using it as the finish to clean up your grammar or something. I also use it at the beginning. So generate some ideas with this, but then think critically about them. How can you improve on this? So now it's driving my students nuts right now, but I have this concluding part in the prompt. If they're evaluating a reading, and I say, well, okay, so why did you choose that reading? I can't tell you why it chose something because it did. If you were going to improve on this, how could you improve on it? What did it do well? What did it not do so well? So it's putting the student back into the center of it and manipulating the use of AI.
That's great. Thank you.
That's really good.
Now to you, with everything considered, there's a mechanical aspect of having to deal with the legislator to make sure we end up with a workable framework so we can still function, innovate, and work, teach, and learn. How do we do that?
Well, I think that has to happen. I mean, it can happen in a couple of ways, but the one that comes to my mind is have open kind of a framework, maybe at a high level, have some guidelines that percolate down to all the different stakeholders within the ecosystem of AI, whether it is the AI developers, whether it is the large language model companies, the big techs. So have some regulations for each of them in the different areas that we covered. The explainable AI, because AI itself is like a black box. You do not know what comes out of it and how does it come out of it. So I think ensuring that whatever models we adopt, they are explainable at the very least. That's one part. Responsible and ethical use. So I think those guidelines we already have in different other categories. So some of that need to be adopted. So yes, one part is at a high level and as a broad guideline. Second is actively seeking feedback from different users, because these two things, when they will converge, they will give us the right way in which we are looking at things and trying to adopt these AI tools and solutions in our in the most beneficial manner. So that's my approach, I would say, to deal with at a legislation level.
And maybe we should just running out of time.
One important point to make about that, because right now the big AI companies are legislating
Yes.
their protective measures to protect their industry. So this is all happening behind closed doors. This is not including our voices in that process.
Yes.
So that's the immediate danger, is they're regulating, they're putting in regulations to block competition.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, who should take the lead on this? I mean, we're talking about the American system. There's a lot of money behind the scenes to make sure that the law actually accommodates people who pay. Unless Kwaai has some.
No, exactly. I think Kwaai is the right place for that activism to start. And as we reach out to more people, like we are today in College of Canyons, we have the faculty, some of the students here. So as we grow our outreach, as we educate people about what AI entails, what ethical AI entails, I think those become the forum to get that feedback from people. And once we have a substantial voice, then we need to start, influencing people at whatever level, maybe at the local governance level, at the state governance level.
So one of the things I would like to add is really important is to have objectives and key results.
Mhm.
So regulation for the sake of regulation is not very useful. We need to make sure we have some objectives, like what is it we are regulating towards or for or against, whatever. So something like, okay, we want to put people's privacy at the top, or we want to keep cybersecurity at the top. Some things like that. And then we should have a periodic way of assessing the regulations. How many violations we are having? Why are there violations? Are they achieving the purpose? Are the regulations achieving the purpose? And then being open to being agile and, modifying our regulations as we go along. So that's an ongoing process, which would also involve educating the lawmakers, the policymakers. Yep. And that's something that has to come from the community. It has to be from nonprofits. It has to be from private organizations. The lobbies will always get there. and also the public.
Sure. So it's a multifaceted effort to articulate the problem, define the solution, build a platform to communicate with all parties to reach a solution. That's what we're saying here.
Yeah.
Agreements, disagreements in the audience.
I'll go ahead and represent one question from the chat for the panelists. Any thoughts on the White House's blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights?
The question is who drafted that bill, right? I can tell you who.
If it ain't, we ain't trying to.
That's the problem.
Ray, maybe you want to comment on that.
That's the problem, is that all of these legislations are being crafted by the lobbyists on behalf of the industry trying to protect their turf. So until community-based organizations start organizing and start learning that they need to get in the game, they're going to be, these things are going to be set in stone. And then you have to get into a defensive mode trying to combat it rather than affecting it. So we need to get involved in the process now before it's cooked.
So as you say, the window is
very short.
Shut it down. Yeah, please, Kai.
Yeah, I would like to talk about education. I think that from my point of view, I have been frustrated when I was a student because people were teaching me to know. They didn't teach me to think. And fantastic to have ChatGPT. They show that knowing is not very important, it's to think. And then the thing why it's important is to ask the question.
Yep.
In the whole education system, we never been rewarded to ask a question. It's almost the opposite.
Because it's disruptive to
Yeah. So I think it's a kind of revolution in terms of what we want to educate. It's no more. So then if it's about how to motivate thinking and asking questions, then ChatGPT is super welcome. If it's about just knowing, then yeah, what is the point? The second thing is when you were mentioning, the people who are going to put the cable will not be replaced and so on. But are we sure that humans were designed to work, right? Is it that the value about humans to put cable that a robot cannot do? Right? So I think that because of our society, we have value based on our work, but maybe it's a wrong way to measure the value of the person. So let's robot to do everything, and then we will have more time to be human.
Yeah.
So
I mentioned that I want the people to be in charge of the robots. I don't want them ditching. I want the robot doing that. I want the people smart enough to know how to program that robot.
But that's the point, because at some point AI will manage the robot too. So what I mean is,
then you move up the value chain. But that's a process. Exactly. So I'm not saying that to preserve all of those jobs. I was in Central Valley. There's a catalog like this of farm machinery. A lot of it is autonomous now. I want people to learn how to manage those autonomous vehicles. I don't want them learning how to drive a weed picker. I want them to learn how to program the laser machine.
But what I'm afraid is the evolution is going to be very fast.
It is fast.
So instead of maybe trying to teach these people how to manage this machine, is to bring them to another space of beyond the work as we understand.
Your point is correct, and that's my point as well, which is you have to teach them how to generate procedures for machines fast. I'm teaching students how to generate a procedure, how to install this router dynamically. You don't have to learn every step of how to do that. You have to learn how to learn faster and how to learn product specific knowledge. Once you learn that, you can evolve as the cycle time gets shorter on product life cycles, which is happening. You can keep progressing. It's a continuous learning cycle rather than teaching static skills.
It's also a transition from how we used to teach to how we should teach.
Everything right now is rigid curriculums that are revised every few years when we've got a continuous learning.
Yes.
It's
in the marketplace.
Education, not just in the classroom, but going back from that. In curriculum, we have these methods of assessment for our classes. Are we teaching to what is required by our curriculum. Well, what if our curriculum is flawed? What if the objectives of the curriculum are, be able to recite a poem? What's the point of being able to recite a poem?
Right.
Be able to understand a poem, or be able to be prepared for what comes after college. It's going to revolutionize all that, and that will bring along with it different ways of transmitting that knowledge. Lisa had a professor who said that I will stand here and lecture to 120 people, and the goal is to get the knowledge from my notebook to your notebook without it ever passing through either of our brains. That's the old chalk and talk way, or the sage on the stage. But we're already in this revolution of education, how to teach, how to impart that knowledge, and why we're doing it, and what knowledge we're protecting. And we're sensitive to all those ethical and cultural nuances in ourselves and in our students and our different identities.
Yeah, I think that Kai brought up a very important point, which is that we just assume that people have to work. And if AI is what we think it is, which is this huge revolution for humanity, why do we have to work if AI and robots can work? Maybe what we also have to focus on is how do we change our economy from capitalism, where your value is based on your work, to your value is based on you. And I think that's a difficult issue and a much bigger one, but I think it has to be put into the mix too.
That'll be a problem, then we all will be equal.
Not necessarily, but you're making a good point, right? So
I think part of that is there's a very famous book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And I think that's basically where we come back. A lot of our meaning, a lot of identity right now is associated with the work we do, with the value we create. And maybe our society's focus will shift on what is value. Maybe it's in being creative, it's in problem solving, it's in the empathy we bring to the table and helping humanity grow forward.
Maybe it's having fun.
I mean, and we keep using,
Really fun.
we talk about job displacement, and we have this reductive model with jobs, like that's, I mean, really what we're talking about is wealth distribution, right? I think there's other parts, but that's the biggest one. It's like if people lose their jobs, it's not like, oh, like in the Industrial Revolution, we really wanted to farm more, or we really wanted to work longer hours. Nobody really wants that. They want to be productive and active and engaged people. So I mean, how we think about that is, I think, a fundamentally different question.
Yeah, well, well, I guess meanwhile we'll continue working for a week. Thank you very much for your questions. Appreciate it. Yeah,